One of the archetypal stories of Donald Trump is how he was groomed by Russia. According to a former KGB spy, Trump showed up on the Soviet Union's radar in 1977 when he married Czech model Ivana Zelinkova, his first wife. And he allegedly became the target of a spying operation overseen by Czechoslovakia's intelligence service in cooperation with the KGB. Noting that the feeling was that he was extremely vulnerable intellectually and psychologically, and he was prone to flattery. And Donald Trump's first trip to Russia in 1987 to explore a hotel deal was brokered by a Soviet tourist agency that was essentially a branch of the KGB. Just weeks after that, word started to spread that Trump might run for president as he started displaying his pro-Russia lean, a trait he took to the White House, effectively delivering Russian President Vladimir Putin his driving dream, a man in Washington. Fast forward to today. It's clear that Donald Trump is bent on returning us to the 1980s culturally and politically. So instead of Charles in charge, get ready for Vlad in charge, because his junior partner, Donald Trump, is back. On Thursday, Putin congratulated Trump, calling him courageous and a real man, and said he's ready and willing to talk or meet even before the inauguration. And members of Russia's elite are already declaring, "We have won," and crowing about a new world order. And of course, Trump is already right back to acting like he's Russia's man in the White House. During a call with Ukraine's President Zelensky, Trump let Elon Musk make a surprise, unplanned appearance on the call. Elon Musk has also been chatting with Putin. One thing that's clear is that Donald Trump's election raises major concerns about Ukraine's ongoing fight against Russia. He's refused to say whether he wants Ukraine to win, and that combined with an isolationist Republican Party eager to withdraw funding to Ukraine, it will soon get very hard not to argue that Russia ultimately won the Cold War and Vladimir Putin is in charge. Joining me now is David Rothkopf, columnist for the Daily Beast and host of the Deep State Radio podcast. David, on that call, it strikes me that that was Donald Trump, mafia style, making Vladimir Zelensky beg Elon Musk for Starlink, to try to beg for his life, because that's the position he's in. His statement after his readout was the meeting was great. He's now having to kiss up to Donald Trump and Elon Musk just to live. Your thoughts?
Well, I think he has no choice. The United States is the critical lifeline for Ukraine. And so whatever he can get in way of U.S. support, he's going to try and get. But I can tell you, I've spoken to people in Ukraine, people who are associated with Ukraine in the past 2 days, and as distraught as many Democrats in the United States were, the Ukrainians were absolutely devastated. They've been fighting a war for 2 years. They've watched their friends, their families, their children, their fathers, their sons die in that war. And they know that Donald Trump is not going to support them in the way that Joe Biden did. And that Donald Trump has already said that he wants to seek a negotiation. And the kind of terms he's talking about are Putin's terms. And, during the last couple of weeks of the campaign, there were stories about Trump being on the phone regularly with Putin and Elon Musk being on the phone regularly with Putin. J.D. Vance is a Putin fan. And so of all the big changes in U.S. foreign policy that are coming, one of the very biggest is going to have to do with Ukraine. And I'm afraid it's going to have potentially tragic consequences.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's no doubt about that. I mean, in some ways, I was thinking about the fact that in many ways, Joe Biden might be remembered as the last American president. Donald Trump is in many ways simply an underboss to Vladimir Putin. The big man in that relationship is clearly Putin, not him. And then on this side of the aisle, the big man in the relationship is Elon Musk and the other former white South Africans who are sort of remaking a country like the one they left and making themselves extravagantly rich the way Putin does. So I want you to just talk a little bit about what it means. I want to put this Le Monde, it was a very sad article that just, it strikes you as, wow, tragic. The end of an American world, Le Monde. This is the French paper Le Monde, and they said it marks the end of an American era. that of an open superpower committed to the world, eager to set itself up as a democratic model. And it's the famous shining city on the hill extolled by President Ronald Reagan. The model had been challenged over the past 2 decades. Now Trump's return is putting a nail in its coffin. The Economist saying Europe needs to wake up, look after itself. The new world is the BRICS world, is it not? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia, BRICS. And Russia is the R in BRICS, and they are ascendant.
Yeah, well, when Donald Trump was president before, we saw that a centerpiece of his foreign policy was effectively dismantling the previous 80 years of U.S. foreign policy. We built up alliances. He sought to undermine the alliances. The biggest alliance, NATO, he talked about pulling out of. We promoted democracy. They deleted the promotion of democracy from the State Department website, and he instead kissed up to autocrats around the world. What we have heard from him in the intervening 4 years suggests that he's only going to double down on this and that we're going to see more of the same behavior. And so people in Europe are deeply afraid of what this means, not just for Ukraine, but for the Atlantic Alliance, which has been the single most important stabilizing force on the planet Earth since the end of World War II. But allies in Asia are also concerned. And, there are others that are afraid. For example, the people in Gaza who believe that Trump is going to give essentially the carte blanche to Bibi Netanyahu, that is going to make all those in the United States who said, oh, well, I'm going to vote against Kamala Harris because I disapprove of Biden foreign policy, regret. And I believe regret soon that they made that choice. Because Netanyahu has already, just in the past couple of days, appointed a more religious right-leaning ambassador to the U.S., fired his defense minister, who was more moderating force. And he looks like what he's going to do is go into Gaza, eliminate Gazans from Gaza, allow Israelis to go in and settle Gaza, and what has been an absolutely tragic situation with at least 43,000 deaths associated with it, is going to get much worse. And so it's not just Ukraine we have to worry about. There are a lot of places in the world where Trump foreign policy is going to let down our allies or put people who are already at risk at much greater risk.
Yeah, and to say nothing of the next Gaza potentially being the West Bank.